Hello and welcome to the European Customer Centricity Awards webinar series. This is the UK and Ireland edition, and this is the last in the series. We do have one more coming up in a couple of weeks, but that will be in local Hungarian language. And then we'll also be running one which is about entering the awards as well shortly after. So do keep your eyes on that, sign up, and there'll be some great information there if you're thinking about entering the awards, as well as some top tips. Just to tell you a little bit about the awards, the entry deadline is on the 22nd of April, and we currently are running an offer of free entries, but those are fast running out. We have less than 30% of our free entry allocation left, so please, if you are thinking about entering, do not delay. Get in there before those run out. We're running a series of masterclasses as well with Ian Golding, who unfortunately can't join us today. You can see those on the left-hand side of your screen. And of course, if you do enjoy this, Oleg is actually speaking at the ceremony on the 22nd, so on the 21st, sorry. So we're very much looking forward to that. So I'd just like to start by asking you gentlemen to introduce yourself. So Neil, if you would like to go first.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated. My name's Neil Davey. I'm the managing editor of MyCustomer.com, which is an online resource for customer experience professionals. We actually rebranded as MyCustomer.com way back in 2007. So obviously we've got kind of a rich archive of material and resources, everything from interviews and advice, practical advice, white papers, research, you name it. It's a sort of a bit of a one-stop shop. So it's nice to be on the other side of a webinar for a change. We're normally the ones doing I'm normally the host, so it makes a refreshing change to be a guest.
Well, thanks for joining us. And Oleg?
Yes, hi to everyone. My name is Oleg Konovalov. What I do, I'm looking for solutions for the most critical problems in leadership, culture, vision, and organizations. So my aim is to close as much as possible gaps when those problems comes. This is what I do. So I'm more of a consultant, speaker, coach, and author. This is my aim. And so this is my passion, to help organizations to make a leap in performance. This is the great honor to talk with you now, because I hope it would make a positive impact for all of us. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. So we'll start with the first question. Where have you seen the best examples of CX team structure and where the CX team sits within an organization? Neil, would you like to start?
Yes, certainly. So, in terms of kind of, I thought what I'd lean on in terms of this point here, I thought I'd lean on a bit of research actually that my customer have recently been conducting. For a bit of context around that, last year, we launched a CX Leader of the Year program, and we decided to kind of survey the CX leaders to learn a little bit about them. Obviously, one of the things we asked was about where they kind of sit in the organization. So the three obviously most common places where customer experience sort of historically will sit within an organization, you'll normally either find them in the kind of the marketing department or the kind of service or operations area, or the kind of semi-autonomous department which kind of sits across all the other departments, often kind of reporting directly to the CEO. So we surveyed about 75 customer experience leaders in collaboration with our partners over at Confirm It to learn a little bit more about the anatomy of customer experience leaders. And as I say, their kind of roles and their experience, but also kind of where they sit. So the research is going to be published on mycustomer.com in the next week or so. And as part of that, as I say, we asked them, to whom the CX leader reports, where their budget's coming from, to get a bit of a feel about where they actually are. So I just thought I'd share a little bit about what we found there, because it gives us a bit of fresh insight into this. So what we found was that many of the CX leaders that we polled report directly to the CEO, and they actually have their own budget as well. In fact, nearly 40% told us that they report to the CEO, and another further 11% report to the C-suite as a whole. So that's obviously, we're talking about over half, therefore, whose programs are reporting directly to the very, very top of the business, rather than, say, to the chief operating officer or the chief marketing officer. Now, on that last point, the marketing department, of course, has always has a strong legacy of involvement with customer experience programs, and it really wasn't that long ago that the marketing department were kind of predicting that they would have ownership of customer experience in the not too distant future. I think there was a survey from a few years ago. I think it was an Economist Intelligence Unit, and they found that the vast majority of CMOs and senior marketing executives that were polled, upwards of 90%, I think, expressed a belief that marketing would actually own the customer experience in its entirety by 2020. And in fact, in a sort of a Forrester CMO report from 2017, a few years ago, it found that the number of global marketing decision makers who had primary responsibility for their organization's CX had grown to over a third, to 38%. So they were certainly clawing control of CX. But what our research is suggesting is that actually, rather than influence continuing to grow since then, CMOs have actually kind of slipped back, and CX has become something that the CEO now wants direct influence on. So to reiterate, that's over half whose programs are now kind of reporting directly to the very top of the business. Now, that's, of course, leaves another kind of half of the respondents who don't do that. And sure enough, some of our CX leaders do still report to the CMO. But what we found is there's only about a fifth, only about 20% that do that. So sort of far short of this kind of where Forrester found them a few years ago, and certainly far short of this idea that from the Economist Intelligence Unit that the CMO would the majority of CMOs would have ownership of it. Elsewhere, we found about 14% of our respondents told us that they report to the COO, the sort of head of operations or the equivalent. Sales have very little skin in the CX game, which I think probably comes as no one's surprise. Others whom CX leaders report include the likes of sort of CFO, Chief Client Officer, Transformation Director, but they're all very, very small numbers. And it's also worth noting that these findings, they do echo recent research from the likes of Gartner. So Gartner's 2019 Customer Experience Management Survey reported that there'd been a significant growth in the presence of CXOs and CCOs, or Chief Experience Officers and Chief Customer Officers, or equivalent in many organizations over the last 2 years, but that these roles very rarely report to the CMO, despite marketing taking control of more CX initiatives. So I guess all of this kind of, it means, so where, this is telling you where things are sitting, but where should they sit? Where should customer experience sit? So a reminder again that MyCustomer research indicates that marketing's ownership of CX has slipped back, and the CEO has stepped up. Is that a good or a bad move? Well, we've sort of still in fairly new territory here. I mean, the customer experience department or the programs themselves are still fairly nascent in many companies. That said, there are a few indicators of where might be the best fit. In particular, there's some research from a few years ago by Genesis. I think the report was called The Value of Experience, I think it was called. And that was, again, a piece of research which was conducted on behalf of them by the Economist Intelligence Unit, and they surveyed about 500 senior executives about how they're managing CX programs. And what really sort of stood out from that piece of research, and it was kind of fairly well shared piece of research, people like Gene Bliss, for example, were sharing it. And what stood out most there was how strongly CEO leadership of customer experience appears to correlate with profitability. The key finding, and there's a piece here I just want I'll quote verbatim, and it says that companies which believe that they are much more profitable than their competitors are significantly more likely to have their CEO in charge of customer experience initiatives, whereas 58% of companies who say that they are much more profitable than their competitors report that the CEO is in charge of customer experience. Only 37% of less profitable companies say the same. We can say, therefore, there is a clear link in our survey between CEO ownership of customer experience and profitability. So obviously, executive buy-in has long been cited as a sort of critical prerequisite for customer experience success. But that finding, I think, really, it really stands out, and it suggests that not only should there be a sort of a commitment to the customer experience in the C-suite, but that chief executives should be making it one of their key personal responsibilities. So that really does appear to indicate those businesses that are having the CX team and the CX leaders report directly to the CEO, as opposed to something like the CMO, for example, are probably doing the right thing. And I'm sure that Dr. Oleg will now say something to contradict me, but based on kind of my understanding, and I said the research that we've done and other research that I've read in the past, that's kind of where I'm seeing the state of things at the moment.
Neil, stop it. I'm human. I'm not. In my view, corporations starts with C for customers. Here we face a problem. I really admire your work on this research, but what I see in practice in everyday businesses dealing with companies actually in different countries, from the US to Russia and from Norway to Greece, the companies who are really keen to develop customer service, they're keen to report what they do. And this is a tiny part of the companies. The majority of companies are hiding themselves behind different excuses. Oh, we're not structured yet, we don't know, and they're actually not following the CX in a good sense. And this is not great. I looked specifically where everything starts, because look, customer is an emperor of commerce or a business, right? So we're serving customers. If we're all right, we're serving well, oh, we got rewarded. If not, customers moving to competitors, which is fair, right? And the only thing that we know that the customer demand is predictable only in a way that it will continue to change all the time. So more or less, what happens when we establish companies? We make a promise, like a groom to a bride in a wedding ceremony, to devote all its effort, not just partial effort. So it immediately reflects where CX team should sit. Actually, every employee should be customer savvy. I'm always asking a simple question, regardless of a rank of a person with whom I talk. How do you see your role in satisfying or influencing customers, even if you don't deal with customers directly? And here comes a problem. People often can't articulate clearly their response. Those who are indirect, like a frontline managers, they think, oh yeah, I'm dealing with customers, I'm handling orders and stuff like that, and that's it. More or less, they're describing their job descriptions, repeating their job descriptions, which is not good. However, at the same time, you see, we are matching values of the employees with values of the customers. We are well into the V2V, values to values era, So what's going on in this sense? We need clearly understand customers, and therefore we should place a team, CX team, not just in front, but across the whole organization. They have this fantastic radar, how to deal with the company is for and what is going on, behind everything. Another perspective, I'm looking at it. I looked at a simple question. What is in a business terms, what problem is? What does it mean, problem? And what I have found, problem is a distance between a business and its customers. This is a grand problem. In fact, just it's either we have a vision for customers or we lost the sight of it completely. And here the problems, grow and becomes bigger, and so business losing its viability. If you're not putting your CX team at the core of your attention, if leaders don't talk to customers, a CEO who never talks with customers can't be a CEO. He don't understand what he is doing. I looked at the case of WD-40, those famous company where all of us got these sprays in the kitchen, in the garage. And I was talking with Gary Rich. I had we are good friends, and I had a number of conversations with him. Gary spends about 30-40% of his time traveling to different sites and talking with people. When I had a chat with him about my experience being at sea on a fishing trawlers that we've been using WD-40, and I got an incredible response. He said, I used to be on these trawlers. I know how to fight sea dust, the salt dust and stuff like that. So he knows what he is doing. And so all his team is aligned to the customer needs. And so they're served in a vault in their brand and the gross. This is simple. This is where I see this, in a way, how it is important, that the team should be not just in the front line, but filled across, not just particularly allocated to marketing department, sales department, or any other departments. HR department involved in this because they should find people who could handle or who are customer savvy and would handle any problem in the name of the customer. This is critical. This is how I see it. Thank you.
Well, I don't think he was arguing with you too much there, Neil. So moving on to the second question. Does the size of the company or industry operates in influence where the CX function should be? Oleg, do you want to start with this one?
You want me to comment? I don't see any difference of, regardless, is it a large corporation or a small company, they're still dealing with customers, they're still serving customers. So if you have an outsourced team which sits somewhere in a different country, it's still serving customers. Yes, they should need to get a response. I have a negative experience. A large company, Lufthansa. I was flying from Birmingham to Frankfurt. Like a ticket was for Sunday, 12:30 in the afternoon. At about 10 o'clock in the evening on Saturday, I got an SMS that so I wouldn't fly this flight. I will fly at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I must change everything. It's no chance to go into Lufthansa call center. No chance. Forget about it. So I arrived at airport, angry, naked, just like, whoo. I didn't got any response. Actually, the company simply tried to make a load of passengers even. Therefore, they did it without even consulting with passengers where it is convenient for them or not. It's a large company, so it doesn't work any good. Small company. I had experience of an IT company which works for a good software, assumingly good. And when I asked product director, have he ever talked to customers, a response was very simple. No. I don't know. We just got an idea. So it's not a matter of a size. It's a matter how people focused on customers.
Neil?
Size doesn't matter. Your care for customers matters.
Neil, do you agree with that?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've not really I've not really heard of any sort of industry or the size which is kind of dictating where it should sit. I mean, obviously, once you get to the size of an organization, it's small enough that it may not even have its own sort of CX team as such anyway. So there's that. What I have seen is according to where the CX team kind of sits in an organization, that can dictate the kind of the nature of the CX team, which is somewhat interesting. So, for instance, what we saw in our research was that if it's reporting to the CEO, it's a much more sort of holistic approach to a CX program. So, you CX strategy, they're involved in the kind of the insight piece. They tend to, they're more likely to have ownership of customer service and indeed the contact center in itself. So that's kind of a much more holistic approach. If it's interestingly, when we spoke to the CX leaders who report to the CMO, it's quite distinct, the difference. All of a sudden, very, very few of them are involved in the customer service piece. Very, very few of them have any kind of ownership of the contact center. They are, as you would expect, heavily involved in the customer experience strategy, but really they're very heavily weighted towards delivering insight and data and market research, and that's the kind of the owner. So it's a slightly different twist on your question, but I think what I would suggest is if the needs of the organization, if what they're after from the kind of customer experience team is a much more weighted towards the kind of insight and customer understanding rather than the kind of wider service piece, then they appear to be then more likely to kind of sit within the kind of the marketing team. So it's a bit of a roundabout way of answering your question, but in terms of sort of when it comes to industry and size, not specific. I haven't seen anything that would say that dictates where the CX function should sit.
Right. Do you have any bad examples of CX team structures?
Well, interesting around that. So harking back to the research again, what we kind of did find with that, obviously, nothing that's specifically bad. There are some unusual examples. I mean, obviously, as I say, the majority kind of sit in this sort of they sit across the business and report to the CEO, or they kind of sit in marketing. We also see some that kind of sit reporting to the COO, which obviously is kind of the operational service piece that they're much more focused on that. There are, as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, there are some other unusual kind of examples. Some that kind of report to the CFO. We've had, I think there were kind of one or two that report to the head of sales, which seems unusual. What we can find by digging down into that data is that the performance of those isn't necessarily as good as perhaps one that would sit in marketing or in or report directly to the CEO in terms of how they're delivering in terms of sort of commercials and financials and in terms of CSAT and NPS and those kind of measurables. But they're not necessarily bad. They're just not necessarily as good. So I think we would need a lot more research into those unusual examples before we can give anything a bit more meaningful. Those stats, they were such small numbers that I don't think we can really make any conclusions based on that. But I did see something the other day that I thought was quite interesting, which was a piece of research from Pega. They did a 2020 global customer experience study. Their research, they concluded that in their study, they found that the IT department is twice as likely to lead CX business initiatives as any other group, which I thought was very unusual. I think they concluded about a quarter of CX projects they found were currently led by IT. And I thought that was extremely unusual. And I know that obviously the sort of customer experience and digital transformation these days can quite often be very closely connected. It just seemed unusual to me. I don't think I've ever really spoken to a customer experience professional, let alone a customer experience leader, who's ever told me that the IT department is leading their CX program. So that seemed unusual. Again, I don't know whether that's it's a good thing or a bad thing. It seems unusual to me. I've not found out what their performance is, but it seemed unusual. Oleg, and what are your thoughts on the IT department running the CX?
I would not be emphasizing IT department. I agree with you because I never saw either IT department leading the CX initiatives or contradicting it or resisting it. No, but what I've seen a bit different cases. For instance, if you look at universities or business schools, there is a fantastic cases. You could see you would love them because administratives are leading professors who actually producing knowledge, and they are customer facing. So more or less administrative staff trying to tell professor what to teach, right, without having enough qualification, right? Otherwise they would be professors as well. And that's very funny because they decide how many hours or what kind of what should be presented to students. More or less, we're having a good reflection now that business school, for instance, where I'm mainly concerned, graduates or MBA, guys with an MBA today are not sufficiently educated. They're just like stumps. And if you ask any of the graduate, what's your experience, it would be saying, oh, it was a fantastic professor or professors. However, we had a trouble with all these routines within the business school, which means those administrative departments are influencing CX in a great way and not in the best way. This is my cases, at least.
Right. We'll move on to the next question. How important are the leadership teams in supporting the CX function? And we'll start with you, Oleg, seeing as leadership is your specialty.
It's a simple. Leaders make great things out of their vision of the customer's needs, right? If leaders don't take, leaders are actually ambassadors between employees and customers. They're our ambassadors for both, right? Because their idea, initial idea, is how to serve customers and what to offer them. And so they are passing it on to employees. If they can't do it, employees can't do it either. We have quite an interesting problems, you know. It actually reflects how leaders helping to increase the distance with customers. They don't stay firm for customers because they're weak themselves. If they're driven by personal ambitions and not prepared, they're looking at the bottom lines or how to reap customers instead of make value for customers. And as a result, employees act the same way as their leaders. Leaders are responsible for culture. Most cases we see, or all cases we see where culture is not people-centered or not purposeful, it is a result of weak leadership. Culture is an energy of all people, you know, qualities, efforts, talents, combined together for achievement of the goal, or we could say differently, culture is a goal of serving people wrapped into vision. And customers are inspired of that culture. And what we see, the people can't even, or leaders, if leaders can't articulate how they envision customers in this ecosystem, employees can't do it either. Another problem is lack of focus. Care for customers is a long-term commitment, and so it demands long-term effort. But of course, it's easier to look at the bottom line, you know, and ignore the customer satisfaction. Of course, you know, sadly, but the promise of quick money comes first, you know, for many businesses, and culture and effort towards customers is far from the top of their list. So we have difficulties with that, you know. What we say, if leaders are busy with writing plans, they ignore people. They ignore context and reality. I love the military saying, when you go to a fight, you fight a fight. You don't fight a plan. And here comes the problem, because leaders fighting plans. I mean, weak leaders. And so customers are not satisfied. Customers need, when we're talking about CX, we're facing a lack of a strong communication. We communicate tons of meaningless information and concern about, different inner problems more than about customer problem. I would say in this way. Imagine if we will tell to customers, we can't solve your problem as we are busy solving our own problem. Does it sound funny? Yeah, but this is often true. Like a case about airline. We all know those cases. And the thing is, I'm as a customer, I want a solution. I don't need your apology of hearing about your problems, inner problems. I want a solution. So this is a result of leadership. Customers are not the source of problems. Incompetent leadership is a problem. Problems reside in people inside the business and in leaders who don't have a feel for customers. This is how I see it. Thank you.
Neil, anything to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with Oleg. Executive buy-in has been cited as a sort of a critical prerequisite for customer experience success. It's been talked about for a long time. Findings such as the Genesis research I mentioned earlier, our own research indicated chief executives should be making it one of their key personal responsibilities. It's crucial to the CX function. And what happens if they don't believe in it or they won't commit to it? As Oleg said, CX it will fail. Senior management has to understand the customer experience concept first and foremost. And often the problem is that everyone thinks they know what it takes to improve customer experience, when in reality, not everybody does. And that's where you need to have a strong head of customer experience or a chief customer officer or equivalent. And then you have to have a leadership team that will actually listen to that person and take guidance from that person. Because the other issue is, even if they do understand CX, even if the leadership really have got a grasp on it, or even if they do listen to the customer experience lead, the leadership team might not even have the inclination to commit to it anyway. Often the C-suite simply isn't brave enough to disrupt the status quo. So even if they do get it, they might not want to try it because the changes that they need to make feel uncomfortable or too disruptive or too expensive. Too many organizations will then just sort of stick to what they know. So if your leadership team don't provide the support in both these instances, it's going to be very, very difficult for your CX program to succeed or to deliver any meaningful change. Now, there's research that was released a few years ago, or quite recently actually, sorry, by Episerver. I think it was the marketing foresight report, I think it might be called, and that was questioning marketers from around the UK about their views on customer experience. And it found that respondents said that companies where the CEO is in charge of customer experience initiatives are more likely to believe in them, because they got their full support, and they are then more likely to be profitable. So the leadership support is crucial. Now, whether as to we're actually seeing more leadership support, even though we know that it's a good thing, that's obviously something else. Now, the MyCustomer research and the Genesis research would seem to indicate that there's sort of a growing number of CEOs becoming more involved with their CX programs, with the heads of CX reporting directly to them. So there's a good sign, rather than the kind of, as we said earlier on, the CMO, the CEO seems to be sort of stepping up. Of course, clearly the CEO is unlikely to dedicate enough time and resources to be able to micromanage CX. But it does suggest that the CEO should be actively involved with the wider customer experience strategy, rather than delegating all of that responsibility to just the chief customer officer. So I think, to summarize, I think we're kind of at the stage where business leaders, they know that CX is important, and they tell you that it's one of their priorities. I just think that perhaps a lot of them are probably better at talking the talk than walking the walk. CX has become, customer experience is a bit of a buzzword. It's a fad of the day. CEOs feel they should name check it. They feel they should probably, if it's a large enough enterprise, they should probably make sure that they've got a head of CX or a chief customer officer at their organization. They understand they should have a customer experience program. They understand it should be high on their agenda, but I'm not sure how many are actually necessarily willing to fully commit to it. And by that I mean, over and above just sort of throwing a bit of money at recruitment and technology, actually committing to the cultural changes that need to take place, which is about more than just opening your wallet. There are root and branch changes that need to take place to change a company culture. It's a huge undertaking for an enterprise to try and change its culture. And I'm not convinced that many business leaders are prepared to take on a project of that magnitude. It's such a long-term initiative. So, it takes a brave CEO to do that. So it's for that reason, I think quite often you will see that the sort of companies will stick to what they know. They're happy to maintain the status quo.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say, do you think one of the reasons that a lot of these CX programs fall flat is that at the leadership level there's an element of fear or maybe even ego that's stopping them as well?
I don't know whether are a lot of CX programs falling flat. I don't know. I think that we're at that stage at the moment where it's organizations are being asked to demonstrate the ROI. I think we've probably been through the honeymoon period of customer experience, where business leaders and the bean counters at these organizations have probably been happy just to kind of open their wallet, invest in it, because they know it's intrinsically, they know it's the right thing to do. The customer is all important. I think now we're probably at that point when we're past the honeymoon stage. Now it's a case of, okay, well, actually, how are we demonstrating there is some kind of return on this investment? And that goes above and beyond the kind of NPS and your CSAT and these customer metrics to something which really speaks to the business leaders, and that of course means something with a dollar sign in front of it, or a pound sign or a euro sign. And I think that's where there's kind of an issue at the moment. That's the kind of the next hurdle now, is being able to be to demonstrate the business value. And that's, Forrester, there was a very well shared piece of material from Harley Manning of Forrester at the tail end of last year, when he was forecasting that 1 in 4 CX leaders would lose their job in the coming 12 months. It was kind of the caveat to that was there's also going to be a large increase in CX leadership roles being created as well. So it's kind of, it's not as drastic as it sounds, but those that are losing their jobs are those that have been in their roles for a period and have been unable to actually demonstrate the dollars and cents return on what they're actually delivering. The customer experience changes, and so it's not so much fear, I think, that's probably causing issues, as it's, okay, well, we've spent a lot of money on this, are we actually seeing a return on this? Because while we feel intrinsically, we feel in our bones it's the right thing to do to have this CX program and be pumping money into it, we kind of feel that at some point we want to make sure that we're not just kind of throwing this bad money after good. So that's my thoughts. Oleg, would you agree with any of that?
Yeah, I agree with you absolutely, because you see, if leaders are not prepared to put their skin into the game, into understanding customers, no one will. And I think, as you rightly said, flushing a wallet is one thing, but putting a skin into a game is different thing. It's a very different level.
Yeah, that was interesting. Thanks for that, both of you. It's interesting to see the different sides of the view for that one. We're down to our final question, which is, how can a company's vision influence CX? Who would like to start with that one?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm really concerned about the vision. And what I have, for simple, we all understand to have a vision about somebody or about a problem, you must walk in your customer's shoes. So vision begins with listening and learning. You listen to people, pain points, and learn how it can be solved. You just think for your personal life. If you're passionate about your beloved spouse, you tend to ask questions like almost daily. How do you feel? What worries you? What can it do for you? What plans do you have? Actually, the same should be asked in relations to customers. Such responses helps to define a vision, what problem you would be solving for customers, and how you would change their future, and so the future of your employees. You must step on the throat of your ego. You need to understand consciously that you sacrifice yourself for others. And so you must resonate with people on a gut level, on a level of instincts. But what I have found, it's quite a number of factors which influence a creation of a strong vision, but all comes to one single strong point. Vision is not a gift, it's not a blessing. Vision comes when your conscious awareness of a problem reaches its peak. So when you're really desperate to solve the problem that worries people, you will get your vision. You know, it's like Apple, Microsoft, WD-40, many other companies who really thought about how they will change the future of people and the way they live. Then vision comes, and those companies remain strong. You know, if we think from a perspective of a gift, you know, I would tell you the gift is only your ability to work hard and stay focused, creating the positive future for people, so employees and customers. And this is quite important because we often consider customer service as something secondary, not relevant to the vision which we have. But customers want to work with winners of their hearts. So you must understand that how customers happy or satisfied. So more or less it defines where you aligned with your vision or not. And if you are doubtful about own vision, then customers' reaction would be doubtful or even negative. And what actions you take in terms of your vision to satisfy customers. And what happens if those who forget about the core part of vision to serve people actually fall the hardest? You know, success is based on business simple approach. Understand customer need or demand, form your vision around people, assess all your resources, and bring them together, and do your best. Thank you. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. You know, for me, when it comes to how a company's vision, how it influences CX, it goes back to the leadership point. You know, what is the vision held by the organization's leaders? Because that will obviously trickle down. And now, for most organizations, it's simply about making a profit for the shareholders. We hear a lot about brand purpose these days. A lot of it's a facade, woke washing, greenwashing, or whatever. I mean, you've only got to look at things like the Pepsi's absolutely disastrous Kendall Jenner ad. It's a great example. We had that Gillette toxic masculinity Super Bowl slot that was much derided. I think we had a couple of years ago, Unilever's one of the Unilever top brass, I think, came out and was saying that woke washing is kind of at the risk of undermining businesses' ability to make a positive contribution to society, and it's undermining all of it. So again, it's this point about sort of talking the talk versus walking the walk that I made a bit earlier on. If a company really does have a wider purpose and a vision beyond profits, then that could translate into something meaningful for customers and something that might connect with them and deepen the customer relationship. If it's a facade, customers will see through it, and that can cause more harm than good. But listen, this is crucially, your vision doesn't have to be one of customer centricity. And that's just one strategy. It's about, the important thing is about having a clarity of purpose and a clarity of vision. Look, you've only got to look at IKEA. That's not a customer friendly experience. When I get dragged along to IKEA, it's hell on. Apart from the meatballs in the cafe, it's a horrendous experience. It's a crowded shop, flat pack, but it's cheap, and that's the kind of the trade-off that they give you there. They know that they're doing everything they can to cut costs out of their model, so that you can buy cheap furniture. That is their model. That is their vision. Not EasyJet, Ryanair. Sorry, is another classic example. It's a sort of fanatical cost reduction. Over there. They know that their customers want low prices. Yes, they want reliability and dependability as well. But ultimately, they're about cutting costs, and that is their vision. It might not be a customer centric vision, but that's them. So yeah, that's how the company's vision will ultimately influence customer experience. Whether, as I say, whether that's in a positive way and it's turning into a customer-centric organization, or whether it's just about accepting your model is not one of customer centricity. It's about delivering value to the customer in other ways. It's not about great service necessarily, but it's about great value.
So
actually, Neil, I fully agree with you, and I could add that strong compelling vision reflects the main purpose of leadership or creating organization. Act for people, act with people, and act for their needs. And this is critical. If you're acting only for your profit, you lost.
Yeah.
You wouldn't.
I was just about to jump in there and say, Neil, that your hell on earth day would be a morning spent in IKEA and then a Ryanair flight.
Yeah, it's probably something like that.
It's interesting because IKEA actually came up in the webinar on Tuesday about it being a positive experience. So it's interesting to see the two sides of the
a positive experience. People look forward to going to IKEA. That's an interesting one.
In their defense, it was a Nordic country, so
okay, maybe it's a radically different setup in the shops in their country of origin, perhaps, rather than over in ours. But certainly in my local one, it's not what I look forward to going to.
Yeah, I'm least look forward to going home and building my own furniture.
Oh yeah, exactly. The actual shop visit's only the beginning of the pain. Yeah, but.
Well, we've reached the end of the questions, so I just want to ask whether any of the attendees have any questions for both of these gentlemen. There's a chat box in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. If you'd like to write any questions, then we'll put them to our guests. Just while you're doing that, just a reminder that we've had quite a few webinars the last couple of weeks. And these are all available on our YouTube. This is the last in the series. As I mentioned earlier, there is one happening for the Hungarian region, which will be in Hungarian, and we'll also be announcing one for the Czechia region and also for the Slovaks as well. So it doesn't seem that we have any questions, so I'd just like to thank both of you for your time today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I hope you have a great day. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.